Thank you all. I know there was a request to sing all the verses. The other verses are, we are young and old together, and we are a land of many colors. That's right, but I know that most of us aren't used to singing a lot, so in acknowledgement of that. Okay, so today we have a really special event. We have 3 guest speakers, Jolie Curtis, Athena Marie Meeker, and Stanley. And what I want to tell you, let me back up a minute. That song by Holly Near was written right after Harvey Milk was assassinated. She was in a taxi on her way to the gathering when she wrote that song. Okay? Harvey Milk being the gay supervisor in San Francisco who was murdered for his homosexuality. And as we gather today, the ACLU is actively tracking roughly 550 pieces of anti-LGBTQ legislation during this year's legislative session, which does not take into account the hundreds that have been passed over the past few years and the continued onslaught that's in the pipeline. Here in Florence, however, we can be grateful that our mayor, for the second year in a row, has made a proclamation honoring LGBTQ people. And many of us were there when that proclamation was made at City Council on June 10th. So yay for safer havens. And in 2019, former Governor Kate Brown signed an executive order to strengthen and update state protections for people in the LGBTQ community. So we are fortunate indeed. This makes Oregon, and indeed Florence, a haven of some sorts for LGBTQ people fleeing states that are shutting down rights and protections. People are literally fleeing for their lives. They really are. There is, in fact, a Unitarian Universalist initiative known as Pink Haven. And I learned a lot about the Pink Haven activity in New Jersey at this year's General Assembly. Pink Haven seeks to help individuals and families relocate to safer states when they come in. And a lot of the people that are coming are, of course, the people that are least able to withstand more oppressions. And many of them are not able, really, to afford housing. So we need to be aware of that, and we might consider, what does that call us as a Unitarian Universalist congregation to do? Today we have 3 local speakers that will be sharing their stories with us all. Jolie Curtis will speak first. Athena Marie Meeker will speak second. And Stanley will speak last. It's important that you know that these stories contain difficult parts because they are stories of real lives. And so please consider this a trigger warning. If something comes up for you that you don't want to have be present in the room, please take care of yourself. I will be available if you want to go in the back room or out the door there. I'll be sitting in the back. And just please take care of yourself. The other thing that I want to make, before we begin, I want to make one factual distinction, because we are a people of many acronyms, right? LGBTQIA2S. And what I want to make clear is that some of these letters refer to gender identity. Gender identity is how you feel inside yourself. Do you feel male? Do you feel female? Do you feel like you're in the wrong body? You look one way, but you feel another way. Do you feel like, well, I don't really feel like either pole. I'm somewhere in the middle. I couldn't tell you exactly where. That's me. Do you feel intersex? Were you actually born with different sets of organs? And so that's the identity piece. The other pieces refer to affectional preference. That is, who people are attracted to. And we can note that these are different aspects of the alphabet soup, and actually, for people that are in a marriage, say, where one partner transitions to a different gender, people who have been lifelong lesbians suddenly find themselves being heterosexual. And I have many friends, and it's like weird, but here we go. Because actually, you know what? It's about the electricity, not the plumbing. Just saying. Okay. For many people. What they have in common, this gender identity and affectional preference, is bodily autonomy. We claim the right to own our own bodies and do with them what we think is appropriate to do with our God-given bodies. This is how the universe has made us. This is how we show up. In this historical moment in the USA, we unexpectedly and quite sadly share this concern with people who are able to give birth to another human, whose rights to bodily autonomy are also being challenged and also need safe or safer havens. So let us remember that the fight for reproductive justice and the fight for LGBTQIA2S rights are linked in this way. It all has to do with who says what we can do with our body. Can we say that it's our bodies, please? Thank you very much. Okay, I think that's enough by way of introduction. I'll let our panel introduce themselves when they speak, because they know best who they are. Jolie Curtis, please welcome to our pulpit.
Oh, being this tall is awesome. My name is Jolie Curtis, and my pronouns are she and her, and occasionally from my mother I would hear Yenta. My story begins in the Bronx in New York City, where I was born. And I come from, at that time it was considered a middle-class Jewish family. And I knew from the time I was very, very small that I was different. There was something about me that just all the other little girls didn't really have. And that was that I liked all the other little girls. Little boys were icky. And so I knew at a very young age that I was different, and I also knew that I had to be quiet because who I was and what I felt was wrong. We moved to Miami when I was 10 years old, and the one gift that was given to me by my family, especially my father, was a love of books. And there was never a restriction on what I could read, how much I could read. I was the kid under the covers with the flashlight. And I started finding books that talked about homosexuality, and I would go to the library and I'd hide in a corner and I would read everything I could. And by the time I was 15 years old, I knew that a closet was not for me. And I came out to everybody and everything, and at 15 years old, I got kicked out of the house in Miami at 15. So my response to that was to help organize the first gay pride parade in Miami in 1976. And you better believe I was the 15-year-old in the front truck screaming, "I'm a proud dyke, and if you don't like it," What I discovered was that having the word dyke hurled at me empowered me. I embraced the word. I love the word. That is who I am. And I fought to be able to say that word. When I was asking Jessie about the topic of this brief talk, she had mentioned, when did you really come into yourself? When did you know that who and what you were was just fine? And that was in 1982. Actually, I moved to San Francisco, lock, stock, and barrel. I packed a suitcase and gave everything away and got on a plane to San Francisco. And I was 20, and I felt like I had found it. And I truly, truly believe that it was a gift from the universe. And then by 1982, if a friend coughed, you were scared. And a very dear friend of mine, Billy Fox, he coughed over dinner one night, and the next day he was in the hospital, and 2 days later he was on a ventilator. And we got him off the ventilator, and I was part of starting Coming Home Hospice in San Francisco, which was the first freestanding hospice in the country. And Billy was one of our first people. And when Billy died at his celebration of life, he left me money for nursing school. He left me my tuition, my books. And I believe in divine intervention, and I have two great examples, because when I applied to the nursing school, there were 35 open positions, and somehow I landed up at number 36. 2 days before classes started, I get a phone call from the teacher, and she's like, well, student 17 is pregnant and just dropped out. Can you be there in 2 days? That was divine intervention. I spent my entire career in oncology, ICU, and ER, and that was when I knew who I was and what I needed to do, because boys were dying, these beautiful, sweet men were gone, and nobody was taking care of them. So what we did in the lesbian community was we said, we will take care of you, brothers. And that was when I truly, truly felt who I was. And you know, people kept dying and things kept changing, and we have lost 642,000 souls in this country alone. There is a generation of people who are gone. But surviving that and the strength that it gave me brought me to my second moment of divine intervention. And that was 30 years ago. I lived in San Francisco from 81 to 94. And in 1994, my ex, who was not my ex at the time, introduced me to my wife, Donna. And that was 30 years ago. And I knew as soon as I looked at her, a lightning bolt shot from the top of my head out through my feet. I quit my job at Stanford. I moved out of San Francisco. I moved to Oregon. And there isn't a single day in my life that I have regretted that decision. And 2 years ago, we were both able to retire. Donna did hospice for 17 years. And we found Florence. And these are tears of joy. Because what I found here was love and acceptance. And I felt like my dream had come true. And it's never been easy, between fighting anti-Semitism, which I fought my entire life, and fighting homophobia. I'm kind of tired of fighting, and the fact that I'm going to have to be marching again for things that I marched for 45 years ago ticks me off. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I want to thank you for this opportunity to share a little bit of my story with you. And in the words of my rabbi grandfather, Shalom Aleichem, peace be with you.
Thank you so much, Jolie. Athena Marie Meeker.
Sorry, I have it on my phone because I have ADHD, and remembering all of this was beyond my limit. First of all, Jolie, if I'm tearing up right now, you are so powerful, and I am so grateful to come from a generation that has been able to be enlightened by yours. So, hi there, I am Athena. My pronouns are they and she, and I identify as both queer and non-binary. I am a beyond proud member of the LGBTQ plus community, and I'm actually really honored to be here, especially with these amazing speakers, because genuinely do not consider myself to be at that level, so like, thank you so much. I knew that I was queer at such an old age, like just so long now, that I don't have an aha moment for you. It has just always been there. There was no sudden realization. It was just innate in me that girls were great, boys were great. People that didn't feel like they decided they were one or the other or were both, they were great. And I loved them. I remember being the one that kissed the girls and the boys on the playground in kindergarten and hoping no one found out. So for me, coming out has always been hard because it's an ongoing process. Every time I meet someone, I'm coming out. I just came out to y'all. There was never a beginning or an end point because it has always been introducing myself means coming out, means being who I am. Unfortunately, the first time I ever labeled myself, it was as bi, as I was trying to figure out who I was or what this all meant. I was in middle school, and I grew up in rural Florida. You don't tell people. So I told peers because I knew my adults would not support me. And I remember a schoolmate had outed me to my biological mother by saying, "Did you know your daughter is bisexual?" And the hate in her tone and in her voice haunted me for years. And it hurt. And when I got home, I faced significant harm and abuse from that woman, which is why I say biological mother. And it made me deny my identity for so long, for longer than it should have, because I felt that somehow I was created wrong or that I was not enough. After my biological mother did lose rights, it was less about being open and more about being honest. So I wasn't loud, I didn't really say anything, but I didn't deny it either. I went to high school in the 2010s. I graduated in 2012, and this was before marriage equality, but it was when it was the hottest topic of the time. And again, I was in rural Florida. So being the queer and rebellious foster kid youth that I was, I wore gay rights shirts, I did all of my topics on gay marriage, and I was very loud in that. And while I love that that piece of me has always existed, and I am so proud of the person that they grew up into, it did lead to a teacher outing me to a foster parent. And my foster parent began to watch me much more closely to figure out whether or not that was true. I ended up dating a girl, and we posted some pictures of us innocently kissing on a blog that I thought was safe and was secret and was mine, and only mine. And she found it while I was visiting family on spring break. And an emergency placement hearing was called because she did not want that in her house. My behavior was not allowed under her roof, despite the fact that it was the same roof where, while I was in a long-term relationship with a male, she left us home alone for several weekends. Because that was allowed, but kissing a girl innocently was not. Unfortunately, during that time, not only was I blindsided, but all of my belongings were packed up into these big black trash bags from my caseworker, or at least whatever she gave. And I didn't even know if I would have a home to come back to. I was on a 2-week spring break, and they were trying to find housing with nothing. Nowhere to go, everything, had no family, what do you do? I was incredibly, incredibly grateful and lucky that a second cousin was able to offer me a room in her home for the 2 months before I turned 18. However, being raised there, I was also raised Southern Baptist. Yeah, so those laughing know that that is not where you want to be if you are gay. I was devout. I went twice a week, Wednesday and Sunday, and I was right in the front row. I was a good church girl. Unfortunately, the foster parent not only kicked me out, but outed me and my girlfriend to her devout parents who went to the same church. Her parents in the church hated me. They blamed me for her being a lesbian. Of course. Things were really bad then, and they were so bad that on the day of my best friend's funeral, a death he caused, I was pulled aside by the head pastor and the youth leader, both people that I had trusted and looked up to and loved. And I was told being gay is a sin. I was told I was a burden unto my best friend's family. I was told it would be better if I did not show my face there again, especially not for his funeral. And I was told these things as a child in a room alone, despite the fact that my family was there and they chose to do it that way anyway. Now, as an adult, I cannot imagine doing that to a child. I cannot imagine holding that much hate in my heart and putting it out onto someone who doesn't deserve it. And it destroyed me for a long time. As devastated as I was, I have to be grateful for that day. Because as I was leaving, I was distraught, I was angry, I was shaking, I was crying. And I ran into my girlfriend's mom, who is not who you think you want to run into then, but she stopped and she said, "I'm sorry, and I know how close you were, and why are you so upset? This isn't that." And she knew immediately that there was something more than me saying goodbye. And I don't know what told me in that moment to trust her, but I told her what happened. And she was so fierce in saying, "That is not true. I hope you are there. I hope you come. His parents would never say that to you. You belong there as much as anybody else." And I will forever be grateful that I got to experience the juxtaposition of two kinds of hate, the kind that is harsh and the kind that is painful, and the kind that may hate what you do. And if that is their opinion, so be it, but they love you anyway. Now, I say that because it wasn't all bad. I don't want you to think it is, but I also think that I have to be honest about the fact that it can be so incredibly painful and unsafe even now. We have done so much work, but that doesn't mean the work is over. I think that's why Pride is so important. It is so needed and meaningful because of what it says about what we have done and what we continue to do. The story I do consider my pivotal coming out moment is when I told my dad, the foster dad that I went to visit that spring, who I now live with. I remember being so afraid of being rejected. And I don't know if anyone here has ever been to Florida, but if you've ever been to St. Augustine and seen the Ponce de Leon Hotel, that is where I started college. And so we were walking back to my dorm, and I decided, wow, this is a beautiful place for me to ruin my life. If it has to go down in flames, why not here? So we sat down on a bench in front of that iconic fountain, and I told him, "Dad, I'm not straight." And he, in his dad-like fashion, made a joke. And he said, "Well, are you still gonna give me grandkids? You know I'm okay with adoption." And I don't think I've ever gotten to truly thank him for that. and what it meant to me. Moving here to Florence has also been incredibly healing, and it was unplanned. I came to visit my dad, who had moved here to take care of his uncle, my great uncle, now both passed. And I landed on March 14th of 2020. Yeah, my flight home got canceled, and I have lived in the Pacific Northwest ever since. I actually just sold my house 2 weeks ago. It has been a trip far longer than I thought it would be, but one that I am so grateful for. Because the very first time that I got to see an older gay couple was in this town. And you don't realize that you have never seen it as a young gay person until you do. And I remember this little lesbian couple, and the taller of the two was helping her wife in a walker into their car right outside of Nosh on Bay Street. And she put the walker away for her and got in the car, and they drove away, and I didn't know why I was crying. I didn't know why it hurt me so much, but why it made me feel such joy, why it blossomed in my heart, until I realized why. Florence is, of course, not without its challenges. I mean, I've been accosted on the street for some of my more out and loud gay t-shirts. And we all know the situation that transpired last summer about drag. But for me, this has been the very first place that I have ever been to that I have felt safe to be myself and to be loud about it. So yeah, Pride for me is about celebrating that love and that resilience. It is about living loud for those who couldn't. And I am so grateful for that. And I am truly proud to get to go to school and study queer rights, which I didn't know would be possible when I lived in Florida, and to do queer theory and transgender politics and queer studies in general. And to write my whole thesis on trans religiosity and focus on these marginalized lives that have given so that I could. So I guess for me, the biggest thing is that hate, shame, and guilt will and has sucked the life out of so many. But getting through that and finding love, acceptance, and pride is worth all of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Athena. Blessings. Stanley, would you like to come up?
I saw Catherine didn't use it, so thank you. I knew there was a way to do that. Good morning, friends, colleagues, congregants, guests, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Wow, I'm super moved. If I have tears, it's going to be tears of joy too, but Jolie and Athena, thank you for sharing those very moving stories. Whew. Okay, so my name is Stanley. My pronouns are she and her, and I identify as a cisgendered pansexual. And if you're not quite sure what pansexual means, because there's a lot of terms out there these days, pansexual means someone who's attracted to all genders. How we like to say it is hearts, not parts. So it took me a long time to discover that part of me. I grew up in a very liberal family. First wedding I ever went to, I was 10 years old in my backyard with two men getting married. My parents had tons of gay friends. I had gay friends all my life. I played sports, you know, the typical gays are in sports, especially on the women's side. And it's true, almost all my friends and many of my teammates were gay. But for me, I really don't have a coming out story because mine is a falling in story. I fell in love. And at the age of 39, after living an avid heterosexual life, I mean, I was an avid heterosexual, I dated men. I was obsessed with men. There was always a typical type, pretty masculine, pretty macho. And I had a lot of gay friends, but I just wasn't interested. But in 2001, after having lived that life and while being married to a very macho, homophobic football coach, I didn't know the homophobic part, I met my current wife, my only wife, Renee. So we became friends very quickly, and there was an attraction that developed, and I was so confused. I had never been attracted to a woman, and only men. Well, I don't get that. What is this person doesn't look like what I'm used to, and it was really confusing. Am I gay? Am I bisexual? I didn't know what it meant. So very quickly, I was married. We were falling in love. I had to make a decision, an ethical decision. Of course, I need to get a divorce. And so when I asked my very homophobic, that I didn't know about, macho football coach husband for divorce, he said no. And instead, 3 days, yep, there's joy on the other end of this, trust me. 3 days after 9/11, when the whole country was experiencing, stress and terror and acting irrational, we had just gone to therapy for our marriage. He came home late in the middle of the night, drunk, and walked around the corner with a gun in his hand, and he put the gun right in the middle of my eyes, and he said, "You are going to die, gay bitch." And I dropped to my knees, and I thought I was going to die. And miraculously, I didn't. I got out of that house. I ran down the middle of the street in the middle of the night wearing a T-shirt and underwear, no shoes or socks. It was cold. I didn't know where to go. I was terrified. And something told me to keep running, because if he follows me, you're not going to make it. So I did. I kept running and running. Thank God I had played soccer, paid off in that situation. And I went to a home finally and pounded on the door, and they let me in. How nice. I mean, this person standing here half naked, and they let me in, and we called the police, and the police said, "Are there any children in the house? Are there any pets in the house? Are there any other guns?" And I said, "Of course not. I've lived there 5 years. No." So they made me stay where I was, and 8 cop cars came to my home and did what's called a tactical entry. And they went in and they found boxes of ammunition and multiple guns. How I didn't know about that, I don't know. And needless to say, he was arrested. And the next morning, I was in shock. I filed for divorce. So the next year, starting that day, was pure hell for me. I was a college soccer coach. I was in the middle of my season. And the college personnel, the leadership said, "You have to leave town." They feared my safety in case he made bail. So I had to leave. And I couldn't tell my team because it was a criminal case, so I couldn't tell them anything, which was painful for me. I never missed a soccer practice in my life, and I was proud of that. And the next day, he was not only arrested, but he was put on administrative leave because he was coaching at the same school I was as an assistant football coach. Rumors started to spread immediately and went on forever. They were horrible, vicious, untrue rumors, nothing close to the truth. But, he had a pack of friends like football does, and they spread those rumors, and it was brutal. The newspapers hounded me to do a story, and I explained to them, "This is not a story, this is my life. It will harm my players, it will harm the football players. Don't do it." And they didn't listen. They put a story in the front page of the paper outing me to everyone. I had to talk to my team, but I didn't know how. I didn't know what to say, so I had to get the help of my PR department helped me craft something. And the friend of my husband who got him drunk that night before he came home and tried to kill me, took that article and put it up on a wall at the school and wrote on it, "True lifestyles will be revealed to all." I was in a blue state, in a blue county, at a liberal college, and I feared my job. I thought I was going to lose my job. And I thought my players wouldn't want to play for me anymore. And I thought their parents wouldn't want them to play for me. And I'd worked so hard in my profession, and I was so successful. I had to contact legal help because I didn't know what to do. And I contacted the National Center for Lesbian Rights. They flew out and helped me, protected me, supported me. And being in a very macho, male-dominated, homophobic athletic department, which, by the way, many, if not most, are, being a female in those environments is difficult, let alone queer. I was harassed, I was ostracized, and I was bullied to no end. And thank you, Nick. And especially by the head football coach who had hired my ex-husband. His name was Keith. And I just thought, is this ever going to end? So I look back on that year, and I'm like, wow, that was quite a year there, Stanley. I was almost killed. I was going through confusion about my own sexual orientation identity, which I never had time to figure out because too many other things were hitting me in the face. I was being publicly outed when I didn't even know what that meant to everyone. I was in this vicious rumor mill that, if you've never been there, you know it's just so not fun. Being ostracized and bullied and harassed, fearing of losing my job and my profession and my career, what would happen. You know, we were just at that point of turning the tides to being accepting gay people in all professions, teaching, coaching. I was in the middle of a divorce, going through a civil court case. The financial drain was incredible. I was paying for the whole thing. He didn't pay for any of it. Going through the criminal court case and the stress and the trauma and the money, and being, you know, in the middle of my soccer season and trying to hold that together. And it was rough. It was not fun. But, you know, the great thing that came out of that is they say that time heals all wounds. And sure enough, at about a year later, things started to get really good. I mean, everything started improving, and it was amazing. The rumors died down and stopped. Finally, I was like off that friggin' merry-go-round. The mass therapy that I was going through, as well as my wife, was working. It was healing me. It was helping me get stronger and courageous and get through this. The divorce became final. The criminal case was settled. My soccer team, my players loved me and put their arms around me. Their parents loved me even more. Our program continued to be not just as successful as we had been, but even more successful, winning and being, you know, producing great student athletes that cared about the world and cared about equality. Renee and I started enjoying our life as a couple, being an out gay couple, you know, it was fantastic. And I figured out, went to an LGBTQITT, one of those letter people seminars at my college, and I was so excited because they got to the P, and I'm like, what's pansexual? And as soon as I came running home, honey, guess what? I figured it out. I'm pansexual. She was like, that's nice, Stanley. That's great. It made me feel so good to know who I am. You know, I love that. And then in 2013, as you all know, finally the United States got its act together and legalized same-sex marriage. And we got married in our backyard, and it was a couple weeks before school started, and funny thing happened. I went back to my office, you know, a couple weeks, new semester was starting, and in my mailbox there was a bunch of cards for getting married. Congratulations. And one of those cards, I opened it up, couldn't believe it. The head football coach, who had ostracized me for 12 years, bullied me, harassed me, never talked to me until I got that card, and I opened it up, and there's a card, you know, Stanley and Renee, congratulations, love, Keith. And I thought, wow, you know, love can heal hate. Love can heal hate. And it was a little thing, but actually it was a big thing because it just showed me that. I fast forward to today, and Renee and I have been together 23 years. We've been married 11 years. 2 years ago, I retired, and we moved to this great little coastal town called Florence. And we are so happy here. We are so accepted and welcomed and included. The queer community is fantastic, and I'm so happy to be part of that queer community. And mainly, I want to say my gratitude to FOOF, how inclusive you have been and kind and loving to all of us. And we joke that FOOF is the gay church, and it is. So thank you very much for listening to part of my story. I greatly appreciate all of you and love you. Happy Pride.